I have met many people in my life who are diligent, intelligent, and well-intentioned, yet they still feel as if life is moving against them. They try harder, think more, pray more, and the results seem unchanged. Then there comes a moment when they whisper something very honest. Not a complaint, just fatigue. Why does everything feel so difficult? In those moments, I want you to know that there is a quiet force at work. It is not loud, not dramatic, but deeply precise. A force that works even when you have not named it. But when you recognize it and begin to cooperate with it, the direction of your life can change entirely. That force is called gratitude, not polite gratitude, not words of thanks spoken out of habit, but gratitude as a way of living, a spiritual principle that operates like gravity or attraction. You may not believe in gravity, but if you step off a roof, you will still fall. In the same way, gratitude does not need your agreement to function. It is quietly arranging or unsettling your life each day depending on how you relate to it. Many people believe gratitude is the result. When there is money, then they give thanks. When there is health, then they give thanks. When everything goes smoothly, then they give thanks. But this is a deep misunderstanding. In the spiritual order, gratitude is not the ending of the story. It is the beginning. It does not come after blessing. It goes before and opens the way for blessing to enter. I want you to pause here for a moment. You do not need to agree or disagree. Just listen. This world is not first a world of events, but a world of the mind. What you call circumstances are only the outer image of an inner state. And gratitude is one of the most powerful inner states a human being can cultivate. When a person lives in complaint, even without speaking it, the mind is sending signals of lack.
When a person lives in fear, even while appearing strong, the mind is sending signals of insecurity. But when a person truly lives in gratitude, not because everything is perfect, but because they recognize that goodness is still present, the mind immediately shifts into a different order. An order in which good has a reason to come closer. I am not saying this to comfort you. I am saying it because it is a truth proven through the lived experience of countless people. When gratitude becomes the foundation rather than a reaction, life begins to reorganize itself naturally. No forcing, no struggle, no self-persuasion, just order being restored. You may be in a difficult season. You may feel lacking, exhausted, or uncertain about your direction. I do not deny that. But I want you to know that the presence of difficulty does not cancel the presence of goodness. And gratitude does not ask you to pretend that everything is fine. It simply invites you to notice that even now, there is something right, something quietly supporting you, even if you barely feel it. If you are hearing these words, you are not here by accident, not because of an algorithm, not by chance. Every meeting with a true idea happens when the mind is ready. And gratitude, when understood rightly, does more than soothe the soul. It awakens a spiritual field within you, a field that begins to draw order, opportunity, healing, and peace without force. Stay here for a moment. We have not begun any practice yet. We have only opened a door. But even now, if you allow it, a new arrangement has already begun within your mind. And that is always where real change is born. I want to tell you this very directly. Life does not operate by luck. It also does not operate by random favor. If you observe long enough and deeply enough, you will see that life follows very precise laws. They are not loud. They do not need your belief to exist, but they always respond accurately to the inner state you are carrying. People often ask me why two individuals living in almost identical circumstances can end up with completely different outcomes. Same ability, same starting point, same opportunities. Yet one slowly opens while the other contracts. One sees a path while the other sees only walls. If you search for the answer outside, you will never find it.
The answer lies in how each person is operating their own mind. This world is first a spiritual world and only afterward a material one. What you call circumstances are simply the solidified results of what you have thought, believed, and nurtured in your mind for a very long time. I do not say this to place blame. I say this to return power to you. Because if circumstances are effects, then the mind is the cause. Gratitude, when understood correctly, is not a pleasant emotion meant to decorate life. It is a scientific law of the spirit. Just as gravity keeps planets in their proper orbit, gratitude keeps the flow of goodness moving freely in human life. When this law is violated, it is not punishment, but a natural blockage of the flow. Every person is emitting a spiritual frequency. No machine is needed to measure it. You can feel it clearly when you enter a room. Some places feel light, some feel heavy. Some people make you feel safe. Others make you tense even before they speak. This is not random feeling. It is resonance or conflict between inner states. States such as fear, resentment, complaint, and doubt always pull the frequency downward. They cause the mind to contract. When the mind contracts, it can only see fewer options, fewer solutions, less light. This is not punishment. It is simply the natural result of a narrowed state. On the other hand, states such as trust, hope, generosity, and especially gratitude cause the mind to expand. When the mind expands, it sees more possibilities. Not because the world suddenly changes, but because you begin to see what was previously hidden. Gratitude does not create goodness out of nothing. It allows you to access the goodness that was already there. You may think gratitude is a soft emotion not strong enough to change reality. But I want you to see it as a tuning of frequency. When you are grateful, even quietly within you are telling life that you are ready to receive more. You are confirming that goodness is real, present, and worthy of increase. I have seen people change the entire direction of their lives simply by changing their inner attitude. Not overnight. Not by miracles, but through the steady return to a very simple principle. What you acknowledge with gratitude tends to stay and grow. What you continually deny through complaint gradually withdraws. There is something very important I want you to understand. Gratitude does not ask you to accept injustice or endure in silence. It does not tell you to deny pain or pretend everything is fine. Gratitude only asks that you do not allow your mind to become completely trapped in negative reaction. It opens an inner space where you can still see what is right even when many things are wrong. When you begin to live with this awareness, you will notice something unusual. Life no longer feels as if it is aggressively against you. Situations still happen, but the way you move through them changes. You panic less. You despair less. You begin to trust that there is a deeper order supporting you, even when you do not fully understand it. I want to ask you one question, and I invite you to answer it honestly within yourself. In recent days, what has been your dominant inner frequency? Tension, anxiety, frustration, or a quiet, fragile gratitude? You do not need to answer me. Just hearing the question arise within you is enough. If you are here and still listening, I want to thank you. Thank you for giving yourself the chance to pause and look deeper. Thank you for not ignoring the small inner calling within you. Your presence here is not obvious or accidental. It is a sign that you are ready to understand life at a deeper level, not only through experience, but through awareness. We will go very far on this journey, but everything ahead rests on one foundation: understanding that life follows laws. And when you understand the laws, you are no longer a victim of circumstances. You become a partner with the order of life. I want you to imagine your life as a room. Not a room outside, but a room inside your mind. Every thought, every belief, every attitude you keep is an object placed inside that room. Some rooms are bright and open, where everything is arranged with care.
Other rooms feel cramped where things are piled up, paths are blocked, and the person living there feels tired without knowing why. The difference is not the size of the room, but how it is organized. Gratitude is the organizing force. It does not immediately bring new objects in. It allows what is already there to find its proper place. When you truly live in gratitude, an invisible order begins to form. Scattered thoughts start to connect. Chaotic emotions begin to settle. And from there, outer life reflects this new inner arrangement. There is an ancient metaphor that remains true. Imagine iron filings scattered across a table. With no influence, they lie randomly without direction or order. But place a magnet nearby without touching, without commanding, and the filings immediately move, turn, and align themselves around the invisible force that is present. Not because they are convinced, but because they follow a law. Gratitude works the same way. When gratitude is absent from your mind, opportunities, relationships, ideas, and possibilities still exist around you, but they remain scattered, disconnected, unable to find their way into your life. When gratitude appears as a way of living rather than a brief reaction, it creates a spiritual field. Within that field, goodness begins to move towards you on its own. I am not saying everything will suddenly become perfect. I am not saying challenges will disappear, but I am saying order replaces chaos. And this is what many people are missing, not because they are unlucky, but because their inner state does not allow order to form. You may have experienced this before. There are seasons in life when you do not do much differently, yet everything seems to flow. You meet the right people at the right time. Solutions appear when needed. You feel supported in a way you cannot easily name. And there are other seasons when you try very hard, yet everything collides, delays, goes wrong, and exhausts you. The difference is not outer effort, but the inner field. When the mind is filled with complaint, it sends out a signal of dissatisfaction. That signal does not attract solutions. It attracts more reasons to complain. When the mind is filled with fear, it sends a signal of defense. That signal does not open doors. It causes you to shrink and miss what is arriving. But when the mind lives in gratitude, even if circumstances have not changed, the signal you send is readiness. And life always responds to readiness. What matters is that gratitude does not need a big reason to begin. It does not wait until everything is resolved. It starts by recognizing that even now something is working for you, not against you. It may be the breath you are taking. It may be someone who did not abandon you. It may be a lesson that kept you from repeating an old mistake. These may seem small, but in the spiritual world, nothing is small when it is seen rightly. I have seen people begin with very little. They had little money, few connections, no special position. But they had what many lack: a deep appreciation for what they already had. They treated their work as a privilege. They treated people as gifts. And over time, life responded by expanding what they were able to carry. Gratitude does not make you passive. It makes you clearer. When you stop wasting energy on complaint, you have more energy to act well. When you stop obsessing over lack, you begin to notice resources you once overlooked. And when you stop seeing yourself as a victim, you begin to cooperate with the flow of life. There is something subtle here. Gratitude does not only attract good, it keeps good present. Many people receive opportunities, but do not retain them. They gain relationships, but do not nurture them. They achieve results, but quickly lose them. The reason is often not ability, but inner attitude. What is not appreciated slowly withdraws. Not because it is taken away, but because there is no environment for it to remain. When gratitude becomes the atmosphere of your inner life, you will notice a very practical change. You react less, but act more effectively. You rush less, but go further. You no longer feel the need to struggle against life, because you begin to sense that life is working with you. I am not asking you to believe this immediately. I am inviting you to observe. Observe how your mind shifts when you pause to acknowledge the good that is present. Observe how a day unfolds differently when it begins with appreciation rather than worry.
Observe how people respond when you carry a field of calm instead of tension. We are not talking about techniques yet. We are not talking about specific practices. We are laying a foundation, understanding that a spiritual field is operating within you every day. And gratitude is how you tune that field so that goodness can find its way into your life naturally and sustainably. If you are willing in the next part, I will help you see the difference between empty thanks and gratitude that truly transforms. Because not every thank you creates a field, and understanding that difference is an important step on this path. I want you to look directly at an important truth. Not every thank you carries transformative power. Simply saying the words thank you does not instantly change spiritual order. If that were true, everyone would already live in peace and abundance. The difference is not in the words, but in the inner state standing behind those words. There is a very common form of gratitude that almost everyone knows. It is polite gratitude, gratitude for manners, gratitude to keep harmony, gratitude to appear appropriate. This kind of gratitude is not wrong. It helps society function smoothly. It keeps relationships from becoming rough, but it has almost no impact on the deeper spiritual life of a person. You can say thank you while your mind is completely absent. Your mouth says thank you, but inside you are still irritated. You say thank you, but feel shortchanged. You say thank you, but think you deserved more. In that case, the thank you is only an empty sound. It creates no field. It opens no door. It moves nothing at a deeper level. The second kind of gratitude is entirely different. It is conscious gratitude, not spoken out of politeness, but born from recognizing that goodness is truly present. Not a habitual reaction, but a clear inner choice. When someone is grateful in this way, they are not just saying thank you. They are acknowledging a principle. They are affirming that goodness is real, active, and worthy of recognition. The difference between these two kinds of gratitude is like the difference between reading sheet music and actually playing music. The notes look the same. The symbols are the same. But only when there is breath vibration and full presence does music arise. Gratitude is the same. It becomes power only when your whole being participates. I have met people who say thank you very often in every situation. Yet their lives remain full of tension, dissatisfaction, and fatigue. And I have met people who speak very little, but when they say thank you, the atmosphere around them becomes still. You feel the sincerity. You feel the presence. That difference needs no explanation. Conscious gratitude always comes with awareness. It is not rushed. It is not mechanical. It pauses for a moment to look deeply. In that moment, a person does not only see the event but sees meaning. Not only the action but the source of goodness behind the action. When someone receives help and only says thank you out of courtesy, their mind may still remain in lack. But when they truly recognize that the help is an expression of a supporting flow, moving through life, they enter a different order. They no longer feel alone. They no longer feel they must strain against the world. And in that moment, gratitude begins to do its real work. There is a subtle point many people miss. Conscious gratitude does not require intense emotion. It can be very quiet, very calm, very deep. Sometimes it is only an inner nod, a silent acknowledgement that something good has arrived, even if small, even if simple. But that acknowledgement is the key. By contrast, polite gratitude is usually rushed, said to finish an interaction, said to avoid being seen as rude. It does not require the presence of the mind, and because of that, it never reaches the level where life is shaped. I want you to begin observing yourself, not to judge, but to understand. When you say thank you, where are you? Are you present or already thinking of something else? Do you truly recognize that something good has occurred, or are you following a familiar script? The answers to these questions explain why some thank yous leave no trace, while others open an entire chain of new movement in life. Conscious gratitude is always followed by a clear shift in inner feeling. After you truly give thanks, even for a few seconds, you feel lighter, wider, less tense. If this shift does not occur, you may still be at the level of language, not yet at the level of awareness. This does not mean you must force yourself to feel better. Nothing forced in spiritual life brings lasting results. Conscious gratitude does not come from pressure, but from truth being seen. When you see, you do not need to try. The heart softens naturally. I want to be clear to avoid misunderstanding. Conscious gratitude does not mean accepting everything passively. It does not tell you to be content with what is wrong. It does not ask you to stay silent in the face of injustice. It only reminds you that even while facing what is not right, there is something deeper that is right. And when you connect with that deeper level, you gain strength to act wisely, not weakness. Many people fear that being grateful while things are unresolved will make them passive. In reality, the opposite is true. Those who practice conscious gratitude are often the most effective actors, because they do not waste energy on resentment. They are not blinded by a victim mindset. They see more clearly where they stand and what the next step is. When you can distinguish these two kinds of gratitude, you have taken an important step. You stop deceiving yourself with pleasant words. You begin seeking truth within each thank you. And this honesty is the foundation of all real transformation. In the next part, I will bring you to a familiar story that is often understood too lightly. A story that shows clearly why only 1 out of 10 receives the fullness of blessing. Not because they were chosen, but because they entered the right state of conscious gratitude. I want to tell you a very familiar story. So familiar that many people have heard it and moved on thinking they already understand it. But there are stories that only reveal their core when we go deeper into life. This is the story of 10 people who were all healed, yet only one was truly saved. 10 people with leprosy stood at the edge of society. They shared the same pain, the same separation, the same longing to live again as normal human beings. When they met Jesus and were healed on the surface, everything seemed fair. All 10 were cured. No one was left behind. No one was rejected. But the story does not end there. 9 continued on their way. Only 1 turned back. And it was that moment of turning back that opened an entirely different level of blessing. Look closely. The one who returned was not healed a second time. He did not receive another physical miracle. Yet Jesus said something unusual to him. Your faith has saved you, not healed you, but saved you. There is a deep difference here that we easily miss if we do not pause. The other 9 received what they asked for. They were freed from disease, but they did not stop to recognize the source of the good that had occurred. They hurried back to their old lives, their old desires, their old concerns. Goodness came to them, but it passed through them rather than settling within them. The one who returned was different. He did not only receive the miracle, he recognized the miracle. And that recognition changed his entire relationship with life. Gratitude here is not a moral gesture. It is not an obligation. It is a sign that the mind has entered a different order. When he returned to give thanks, he acknowledged that goodness did not come from luck or personal effort, but from a deeper benevolent source at work in life. That moment of acknowledgement saved him not only from illness, but from an old way of living. A way of living where people chase outcomes without ever touching the source. Many of us are like the 9. We ask, and when we receive, we rush forward. We call it practicality. We call it being busy. But in doing so, we lose the greatest opportunity, the opportunity for inner transformation. The issue is not that the 9 were ungrateful in a moral sense. They may have felt happy. They may have felt thankful inside. But they did not stop. They did not return. And because of that, their gratitude never had time to become a way of living. The one who returned did something very simple yet very rare. He stopped in the middle of results to reconnect with the source. And that opened a new relationship with life for him. I want you to ask yourself honestly, in your life, how many times has something good happened and you simply moved on? You did not return to acknowledge it. You did not allow gratitude to go deep enough. You did not allow goodness to become a foundation rather than just an event. We live in a very rushed world. Even when helped, we rush. Even when healed, we rush. We fear that if we stop, we will fall behind. But the truth is that because we do not stop, we keep running in circles. The one who returned did not lose time. He was not delayed. On the contrary, he entered a deeper order where life is no longer a chain of reactions, but a conscious flow. There is something very important to see here. Gratitude is not only a reaction after receiving good. Gratitude is an act of confirming that goodness is real, active, and trustworthy. When you do that, you are not only looking back. You are shaping what comes next. The one who returned planted a very different seed. A seed of trust. A seed of living relationship with the source of goodness. And that seed did not affect just one moment, but the way he lived from then on. I have met people like this in modern life. They do not necessarily have more than others, but they carry a different kind of peace. They do not panic when good has not yet arrived. They do not become arrogant when it does, because they have learned how to return to the source, to return to conscious gratitude. If you only receive without returning, life may teach you how to receive more, but it will not teach you how to live deeper. And eventually, no matter how much you have, you may still feel empty. I am not saying this to blame you. I am saying this to invite you into a new choice. The choice to return, not to a place, but to an inner state. The state of acknowledgement. The state of living gratitude. Right now, if you are listening, you have an opportunity. Not to do more, but to pause for a moment and realize that you may have gone very far, yet never truly returned to the source of the good in your life. If these words touch you, I invite you to do something very simple. Leave a sign for yourself. You do not need to write much. You can simply comment, "I am ready to change," or even just the number 1. This is not to prove anything to anyone. It is how you tell yourself that this time I will not only receive, I choose to return. Thank you for staying and listening until here. Your presence is not ordinary, and this conscious presence itself is already a form of deep gratitude. If you ask me why so many people talk about gratitude, practice gratitude, even teach gratitude, yet their lives do not undergo deep transformation, I would answer with a very simple truth: because they have only touched one part of gratitude and have not yet entered its full structure. Gratitude is not a point. It is a flow, and this flow only moves fully when 3 movements happen together. If one of the 3 is missing, the energy breaks. Goodness may reach you, but it does not stay. It may pass by, but it does not take root. These 3 movements are not abstract theory. They are what happens within you every time you truly feel grateful. The problem is that most of us are familiar with only 1 or 2, and then wonder why the results do not last. The first movement is mental recognition. This is the beginning, and also where many people stop. Mental recognition means you see, you understand, you acknowledge that something good is present. Not emotionally, but with inner clarity. You look at a situation and say within yourself, "This is good. This is not random. This is not meaningless." Many people skip this step or do it superficially. They say thank you, but in their mind they still believe things will turn bad. They acknowledge with words, but deny with belief. In that case, the mind has not truly recognized. It is only repeating a learned formula. Mental recognition is a powerful act. It is like turning on a light in a dark room. You do not need to move the furniture. You only need to see where things are.
When you recognize that goodness is present, even if small, even if fragile, you bring light into your mind. And where there is light, chaos begins to lose its power. The second movement is genuine emotion. This is where many people feel difficulty because they are used to living disconnected from their feelings. They believe understanding is enough.
But in spiritual life, understanding without feeling is like reading music without sound. When you truly recognize something good, a subtle emotion arises. It is not necessarily joy. Often, it is a softening, a sense of calm, a gentle opening in the chest, a moment where your breath deepens without effort. This is the sign that gratitude has moved from the head to the heart. If you say thank you without any emotional movement, it is likely you are still at the mental level. Not because you are wrong, but because you have not yet allowed yourself to go deeper. And this cannot be forced. The heart does not open by command. It opens when truth is seen clearly enough. Some people tell me they feel nothing when they practice gratitude. I do not rush to correct them. I simply invite them to stay longer. Do not say thank you and immediately move on. Stay with the good for a few more seconds. Let it touch you. Very often, emotion does not arise because you are too quick to complete the ritual. The third movement is active expression. This is where gratitude leaves the inner world and enters life. If you recognize and feel but do not express, the energy circles within you without an outlet, like water held back, unable to nourish any land. Expression is not only saying thank you. It can be writing it down. It can be a kind action. It can be caring better for what you already have. It can be a different way of choosing to live. When you express gratitude, you are telling life that you do not only see good and feel good, but you are willing to cooperate with it. Many people sense this in everyday moments. When they sincerely thank someone, the atmosphere changes. When they write what they appreciate, their mind settles. When they act from gratitude rather than obligation, results are often lighter and more lasting. What you need to understand is that these three movements are not separate steps. They are one continuous process. Recognition leads to feeling. Feeling leads to expression. And expression strengthens recognition. When all three are present, gratitude becomes a living force. If you only recognize without feeling, gratitude becomes dry. If you only feel without recognition, it becomes vague and fades easily. If you recognize and feel without expression, it becomes trapped and unfruitful. Only when all three move together does goodness truly enter your life and stay. I want you to reflect on times you tried to practice gratitude but saw no change. Most likely one of these movements was missing, not because you did it wrong, but because you had not yet seen the whole picture. Gratitude is not a technique to get something. It is a way of living. And this way of living requires the participation of your whole being. The mind to recognize, the heart to feel, and action to allow goodness to flow through you into the world. When you live this way, you do not need to chase blessings. You become a place where blessings can rest. And that is a very different thing. In the next part, I will take you deeper into the first movement, mental recognition. Because if this foundation is not stable, the other two cannot last. We will talk about how to move from anxious asking to present affirmation, and why this completely changes your relationship with life. If there is one place where transformation always begins, it is not in circumstances, not in actions, but in the human mind. I have observed this for many years. Every lasting change starts with a very subtle shift in how we see life. And the first movement of gratitude is mental recognition, a clear, sober awareness that is not emotional, not vague, and not rigid either. Many people pray, say thank you, and practice rituals, yet deep inside they still hold a quiet belief that goodness is not truly present. They thank with their mouth, while fear remains in their thoughts. They speak trust, while their mind still waits for proof from the outside. In this state, the mind has not yet recognized. It is still asking rather than affirming. Mental recognition is the moment you pause and acknowledge a very basic truth. Goodness is not something that must be created through tense effort. It is the nature of the source of life. And because of that, it is already present before you manage to notice it. When the mind accepts this, not as a comforting idea, but as a living principle, the way you pray, think, and respond begins to change. Let me be clear here. Anxious asking always places you in the position of lack. And when you repeatedly affirm that you are lacking, you strengthen that state in your mind. Not because you are punished, but because the mind is shaping its own image. You stand outside the door waiting for someone to open it. Mental recognition is different. It does not claim that everything is perfect. It does not deny difficulty, but it affirms that even in this situation the principle of goodness is still operating. And because of that, you are not standing outside the door. You are standing within the flow. You are not asking permission to receive. You are acknowledging that you are already within the order of life. When Jesus taught the daily prayer, he did not say, "Ask for bread for tomorrow." He said, "Affirm bread for today. Give us today our daily bread," not as an anxious plea, but as a calm recognition that the source of life is continuous and present. In spiritual order, the present is always where provision is given. Mental recognition requires great courage. The courage to let go of habitual worry. The courage to stop constantly predicting the worst. The courage to stop telling yourself the story that life is against you. When you recognize that goodness is the nature of life, you no longer need to convince life. You only need to stop resisting it in your mind. Many people ask me how to move from asking to affirming. I usually say you do not need to learn anything new. You only need to release an old habit. The habit of thinking you come last, that you are not enough, that you must wait. Mental recognition is standing upright inside and saying the source of goodness is here. It is active, and I am part of this order. This does not mean you stop acting. On the contrary, your actions become clearer. When you are no longer obsessed with proving or grasping, you see more clearly what needs to be done. You act not from fear, but from understanding. And action born from understanding always carries deeper strength. There is a common misunderstanding I want to clarify. Mental recognition is not repeating empty affirmations while doubt fills your heart. That is not affirmation, that is self-soothing. True affirmation happens when you see something as real, even if you have not yet seen its physical result. For example, when you face a financial challenge, mental recognition is not saying that you are already wealthy. Mental recognition is acknowledging that supply is not exhausted, that intelligence, opportunity, and solutions still exist even if you cannot see them clearly yet. When you affirm this, your mind opens. And in that opening, solutions gain space to appear. I have seen people change an entire situation simply by changing how they see it. Not through miracles, but because they stopped blocking the flow with fear. When the mind no longer contracts, it becomes a channel rather than a wall. Mental recognition also asks for deep honesty with yourself. You cannot pretend to recognize. If doubt is still there, acknowledge it. Honesty is always the first step toward light. But do not stop at doubt. Observe it. Ask where it comes from. Often doubt does not come from present reality, but from old memories, from past disappointments. When you see this, you begin to separate the present from the past. And this brings great freedom. You no longer respond to life through old wounds. You begin to respond from a new awareness. The awareness that even now you are being supported in ways you may not yet have words for. I invite you to try something very simple. When anxiety arises, instead of asking for it to disappear, pause and affirm something small but certain. Affirm that you are breathing. Affirm that you are present. Affirm that you have survived difficult things before. This is not self-comfort. This is recognition of reality. From these small affirmations, the mind begins to rebuild its foundation, and on that foundation, gratitude can take root. Not gratitude because everything is finished, but gratitude because a deeper order is still operating, even when the surface feels unsettled. When you live in this awareness, your thank you is no longer a sentence. It becomes a state. You do not give thanks to receive. You give thanks because you have recognized, and that recognition itself is the greatest gift. In the next part, I will guide you into the second movement, genuine emotion. Because if recognition is light, then emotion is warmth. And only when there is both light and warmth can life truly grow. If mental recognition is the light that helps you see the path, then genuine emotion is the warmth that gives you the strength to walk it. Many people stop at the light. They understand clearly. They speak correctly. They can explain spiritual principles fluently. Yet their lives remain dry, because light without warmth does not allow anything to grow. I have met many people like this. They tell me they are grateful. They understand why gratitude matters. Some even teach others about gratitude. But when I look at their lives, I see very little softness, very little peace, and a great deal of tension hidden behind intellect. There is awareness, but the heart remains closed. Genuine emotion is not excitement. It is not loud joy. It is not temporary enthusiasm when things go well. The true emotion of gratitude is usually very quiet. It feels like a softening inside, a moment when you stop bracing yourself, a moment when you no longer need to prove anything, a moment when your breath deepens without effort. When gratitude truly moves from the mind into the heart, you feel it in your body, not as a thought but as a physical experience. Your chest may soften, your shoulders may relax, your breathing may slow down. These are real signs. They tell you that you are no longer just understanding goodness, you are allowing it to touch you. Many people say they feel nothing when they practice gratitude. I never rush to conclude that they lack the ability to feel. The reason is usually simple. They are in a hurry. They say thank you as a task to complete and immediately move on. The heart needs time. Not much. Sometimes only a few seconds. But if you do not stay, it does not have time to open. Genuine emotion cannot be forced. You cannot command yourself to feel grateful. The heart does not work by orders. It opens when it feels safe. And it feels safe only when you pause without demand, without pressure for results, without rushing ahead. There is a common misunderstanding I want you to release. Many people believe that to truly feel grateful, they must feel happy. And when they are not happy, they think they are doing it wrong. But the deepest gratitude does not always come with joy. Sometimes it comes with tears. Sometimes with deep stillness. Sometimes it is simply a quiet acknowledgement that even without full understanding, you are being supported. Have you ever stood before something ordinary like morning sunlight coming through a window and suddenly felt a tightness in your throat? Not sadness, not happiness, but something hard to name. That is the moment the heart touches the truth, that you are alive. That is genuine gratitude. This feeling does not come from thinking. It comes from presence. When you are truly present with what is happening without judgment, without comparison, without rushing to label, the heart has space to respond naturally. And that natural response is gratitude. Many people have lived in their heads for so long that they forget the heart has a voice. They understand everything but do not allow themselves to feel. And without feeling, spiritual life becomes a system of concepts rather than a lived experience. I want you to understand this clearly. Genuine emotion does not make you weak. It does not make you lose control. On the contrary, it softens rigidity. When you allow yourself to feel gratitude, you stop fighting life. And when you stop fighting, you gain more energy to live rightly. Some people fear emotion because they were once hurt. They learn to close their hearts to protect themselves. That may have helped them survive a season. But if they never reopen, they live their whole lives in defense. Gratitude, when truly felt, is one of the safest ways for the heart to open again, because it does not force you to face old wounds. It simply invites you to notice what is supporting you right now. If you find it hard to feel, do not blame yourself. Start very small. Do not look for big emotion. Look for gentle softening. For example, when you take a sip of water, pause for a second and feel it enter your body. When you inhale, feel the air fill your lungs. When you hear a kind voice, allow yourself to stay with that feeling a little longer. These small moments are doorways. The heart does not open through grand speeches. It opens through simple, real, present moments. There is something important to remember. If you do not feel gratitude immediately, it does not mean it is not there. You may have lived in tension for too long. When a muscle has been tight for a long time, it needs time to release. The heart is the same. Be patient with yourself. Genuine emotion does not need to last long. Sometimes it appears only for a few seconds, but those seconds are enough to shift your entire inner frequency, enough to remind you that you are not alone, enough to help you move forward with more gentleness. When you allow genuine gratitude to appear even in a small way, you are doing something essential. You are allowing goodness not only to be understood, but to be received. And only when it is received can it nourish you from within. In the next part, I will guide you into the third movement, active expression. Because if recognition is light and emotion is warmth, then expression is the action that allows goodness to pass through you and touch the world. And it is there that the circle of gratitude becomes complete. There is a very quiet yet precise law at work in every life, whether one notices it or not. It is the law of recognition. What is recognized grows. What is ignored fades. What is denied withdraws. And what is recognized with gratitude not only stays, but seeks to expand. I want you to look back at your life, not to judge, but to observe. Observe what is increasing. Some people say their life is full of problems, but when you look closely, you see that they give most of their attention and energy to problems. They retell problems. They analyze problems. They predict more problems. Then they are surprised when problems keep appearing. This is not punishment. It is simply the response of a law. There are also people living in difficult circumstances, yet they always seem to find a way forward. They do not deny hardship. They do not pretend everything is fine. But they have a very different habit. They recognize what is right, even within what is not right. They notice small help. They notice lessons. They notice inner strength being awakened, and those things begin to multiply. What matters here is not the starting circumstance, but where you place your attention. Attention is the seed. Gratitude is the water. Where you water, growth happens. There are no exceptions. I have seen people with very little who care for that little with appreciation. They take care of their work. They respect their relationships. They are grateful for small opportunities. And gradually life gives them more, not as favoritism, but because they have shown they are soil that can receive. I have also seen people with a lot who always feel lacking. They focus on what they do not have. They dismiss what is present. They take good things for granted, and then good things slowly withdraw, not because they are taken away, but because they are no longer recognized. There is a simple saying that is strangely true. What is blessed multiplies. What is cursed dries up. In modern life, we may not use words like blessing or curse, but we do this every day by how we think and speak about our lives. Each time you say your work is terrible, you drain energy from it. Each time you say you are not enough, you narrow your ability to see solutions. Each time you dismiss something small,
you close the door to something greater. Not because life is harsh, but because it always responds accurately to the signal you send. Gratitude is not praising everything. It is recognizing what is working for you, even if it is small. When you recognize that you are telling life that you see, and life always expands what is seen, there is something very practical I want you to apply. When you feel stuck in an area, do not try to imagine a big outcome immediately. Ask a simple question. In this area, what is working even slightly? It may be a skill you have gained. It may be someone who supported you. It may be a lesson that kept you from repeating an old mistake. When you recognize that and acknowledge it with gratitude, you have already begun to shift direction. I am not saying this will instantly solve everything, but it will change your inner state. When the state changes, action changes. When action changes, results change. This is not a miracle. It is a process. Many people wait until everything is good before they feel grateful. But that is against the law, because gratitude is not the result. It is the cause. It is not the final reward. It is the original seed. If you wait for big reasons to be grateful, you may wait a very long time. What separates those who move forward from those who stay stuck is not the number of challenges they face. It is what they recognize within those challenges. One person sees only lack. Another sees lack and a small seed beginning to sprout. And that seed is what multiplies. I want you to pause and ask yourself one honest question. Recently, what has been growing in your life? Dissatisfaction or small appreciation? A sense of victimhood or a sense that you still have choice? You do not need to answer me. Just answer yourself. If you are listening until this moment, I want to say thank you slowly. Thank you for giving your time and presence. Thank you for allowing yourself to look back instead of only reacting. Your presence is not automatic, and that presence itself is already a sign that something good is asking to grow within you. In the next part, we will talk about a very powerful practice that sounds simple, but can change how you see everyday life. A practice that turns gratitude from an idea into a living habit. And from that habit, a new order will slowly form. Some practices sound very simple at first, even too gentle to create real change. Yet these are often the most powerful practices because they touch the unconscious habits that have been directing our lives for years. Today, I want to share one such practice. I call it a day without complaining. When I say no complaining, I am not only referring to spoken words. I am talking about a deeper awareness. Not feeding complaints in the mind, not replaying dissatisfied stories in your head, not silently resisting life with bitter thoughts. Because many complaints are never spoken yet, they still operate quietly and constantly. You may not notice this, but complaining is one of the greatest energy drains in human life. It does not solve problems. It does not create solutions. It only reinforces the feeling that you are stuck. And when the feeling of being stuck is repeated long enough, it becomes part of your identity. A day without complaining is not a challenge to prove that you are better. It is a spiritual laboratory, a place where you can clearly observe where your mind naturally goes when it is not guided. The moment you set the intention today, I will not complain, you will notice something interesting. The mind wants to complain far more often than you think. You will see it appear in small moments. In traffic, when someone does not do things your way, when work creates extra tasks, when the body feels tired, when plans do not unfold as expected. Complaining is almost the first reflex of an untrained mind. Here's the key point. Every time you complain, even silently, you withdraw energy from the present moment. You are telling life that this moment is wrong, that it should not exist. And when you repeatedly deny the present, you also deny the possibility of change that can only arise from this present moment. Practicing a day without complaining does not mean denying difficulty. It does not ask you to pretend everything is fine.
It only asks you to do one very specific thing. When you notice a complaining thought arise, pause and replace it with a specific recognition of gratitude. For example, instead of thinking this work is exhausting, pause and recognize that this work is still providing something. It may be income, it may be skill, it may be discipline, it may be a lesson about your own limits. You do not need to like the work. You only need to stop completely denying the good that exists within it. At first, this may feel uncomfortable, because the mind has used complaining as a way to release pressure. But you will soon realize something. Complaining does not truly release pressure. It only shifts pressure from the situation into your inner world. It does not make you lighter. It makes you heavier without you noticing. When you truly avoid complaining for one day, you will experience a clear inner cleansing. Negative thoughts surface more quickly, and because you see them clearly, they begin to lose their power. You are no longer carried unconsciously. You begin to have choice. Some people tell me they cannot stop complaining. I do not argue. I simply invite them to try one day. Not to succeed, but to observe, to see how deeply complaining has become a reflex. That observation alone is already a powerful awakening. During a day without complaining, gratitude is no longer a beautiful idea. It becomes a practical tool. Each time you replace a complaint with grateful recognition, you redirect energy. You stop feeding the victim mindset and begin nurturing a sense of cooperation with life. What is interesting is that when you stop complaining, others respond differently. Not because they change, but because you are no longer emitting resistance. Conversations feel lighter. Conflicts soften more quickly. You no longer need to defend yourself so much. And this lightness opens solutions you could not see before. A day without complaining also shows you clearly what is truly exhausting you. Not circumstances, but your reactions to them. When reactions pause, you begin to see which issues actually need resolution and which are simply habits of complaint. I am not saying you must live your whole life without complaining, but if you can live one day this way, you will understand why many people never leave old cycles. They are not trapped by circumstances. They are trapped by how they speak about those circumstances in their own minds. Think of a day without complaining as rest for the mind, a day when you stop opposing yourself, a day when you allow life to be as it is while still keeping the freedom to choose how you respond. I want to ask you a simple but honest question. If for just one day you stop complaining and replace each negative thought with a small, grateful recognition, what do you think would change in you? Not outside, but in how you experience yourself. If you are listening until this point, I want to thank you again. Thank you for being patient enough to go deep, not just seeking inspiration, but seeking truth about yourself. Your presence, your listening, is the foundation of all real change. In the next part, we will move into another important topic. Gratitude does not only change the individual. When practiced rightly, it also spreads and creates a much larger field of influence. And there you will see why a truly grateful person never lives alone in their spiritual life. There is something very important that many people have never considered. Gratitude is not a closed experience. It is not something that happens only inside one person and ends there. When gratitude is truly present, it naturally spreads. Not through teaching, not through persuasion, but through presence. You may have met people like this before. They do not talk much about spirituality. They do not try to inspire. Yet when you are near them, you feel lighter. You breathe more easily. You feel less guarded. This is not accidental. It is the effect of an inner state that has been adjusted. When a person lives in conscious gratitude, they no longer emit a frequency of resistance. They do not enter conversations needing to prove they are right. They do not try to dominate. And because of this, the space around them becomes safer. Others can lower their defenses.
They can speak honestly. They can listen. They can be present.
Gratitude, when lived correctly, creates a field of influence. This field is quiet but strong. It is like a fragrance. You cannot see it, but you can feel it. And you do not need to do anything for it to spread. When you are in the right state, it spreads on its own. Many people believe that to help others, they need advice. They need solutions. They need the right words. But in many situations, what people need most is not a solution, but a space without judgment. A space without rushing to fix. A space where they can breathe. When you live in gratitude, you unintentionally create that space. Because you do not view life through lack. You do not view others through error. You see them as learning, moving, living. And this way of seeing softens a great deal of invisible tension. I have seen families change not because someone delivered a great lesson, but because one person in the family changed their inner state.
When that person stopped complaining, stopped blaming, stopped repeating old stories, the atmosphere in the home began to shift. Not instantly, but enough for others to feel it. The same is true at work. A team can be full of pressure, but if one person does not feed bitterness, does not spread dissatisfaction, does not gossip, the collective energy begins to move. Not because that person is perfect, but because they stop adding fuel to negativity. This is important to understand. Gratitude is not about trying to make others happy. It is about stopping yourself from making things heavier. When you do not add complaint to shared space, you already help ease much more than you realize. There is a common mistake I want you to avoid. Do not turn gratitude into a moral performance. Do not try to appear positive as an example. Others sense pretense very quickly. True gratitude does not need to be displayed. It is quiet. It is steady. It does not need recognition. If you live it sincerely, others will feel it naturally. And if they are not ready, you do not need to be disappointed. Gratitude does not force. It invites. Something very beautiful happens when many people live in this state. They do not need to meet. They do not need agreement. But when many individuals adjust their inner life, by the same principle, shared life begins to change. Kindness becomes easier. Cooperation arises more naturally. Misunderstanding decreases. This is why I always say gratitude is not only a personal path. It is a silent but real contribution to the world. You do not need to change humanity. By changing how you show up in each meeting, each relationship, each situation, you already do more than you think. There will be days when you feel tired, days when you do not feel grateful. That does not mean you have failed. Gratitude does not demand perfection. It simply invites you to return whenever you notice you have slipped. Return to awareness. Return to the breath. Return to the small good that is present. When you do this, you are not only healing yourself, you are preventing a chain of negative reactions from spreading. You are choosing not to pass on your heaviness. And that is a very responsible act, even if no one sees it. I want you to understand this. The world does not need more people who argue well. It needs people who can remain peaceful when everything shakes. And gratitude is one of the most sustainable ways to build that capacity. If you are listening to this now, you may be someone who has more influence than you realize. Not through power, not through title, but through inner state. Do not underestimate that. I invite you to do something very simple, not for me, but for yourself. If these words feel meaningful, leave a small sign. You can comment, "I am ready to change," or simply the number 1. This is not a big promise. It is only an acknowledgement that you are present and open. Thank you for staying until here. Thank you for listening with real attention. Your presence, your willingness is how gratitude begins to spread, not through words, but through life. In the next part, we will go into a very deep layer.
gratitude in the darkest seasons of human life. Not to decorate pain, but to discover why in darkness gratitude becomes one of the greatest forces of liberation. There are seasons in life when every word about gratitude feels distant. When loss arrives, when illness knocks on the door, when a relationship falls apart, when years of effort seem to collapse in a single moment. In those moments, if someone tells you to be grateful, it can hurt even more. I understand that. And so I want to be very clear. Gratitude in darkness is not praising pain. It is not denying tears. It is not pretending to be strong. Gratitude in darkness is a very different stance. It does not focus on the event. It turns toward what the event cannot destroy. When everything outside is shaken, there is something that still remains whether you notice it or not. Life is still breathing within you. The ability to feel. The ability to stand again even slowly. The ability to not lose yourself completely. I have met people who have walked through losses no one would ever wish for, and I have seen a clear difference. Some allow pain to become the place they live forever. Others allow pain to pass through them without defining them. The difference is not endurance. It is direction of vision. When you are in darkness, gratitude does not begin with seeing good things. It begins with refusing to let the mind conclude that everything is meaningless. It begins by keeping a very small opening for the possibility that even if you cannot see it, a deeper order is still at work. Think of the ancient stories people have told for thousands of years. Not stories of easy victory, but stories of people pushed to the deepest places. Job lost everything. Paul and Silas were imprisoned in darkness. These images are not told to glorify suffering. They are told to remind us that there is an inner state that circumstances cannot lock away. Job was not grateful for loss. He held gratitude because the source of life did not disappear with what was taken. Paul and Silas did not sing because they enjoyed prison. They sang because they refused to let darkness define who they were. And in that place, a door opened. I want you to understand this deeply. Gratitude in darkness is not an emotion. It is an inner position, a quiet decision that no matter what happens, I will not give this event all authority. I will not let it define the final meaning of my life. There are days when you cannot find anything to be grateful for in your situation, and that is okay. On such days, gratitude can be very simple. Gratitude that you are still breathing. Gratitude that you can still feel, even if it is pain. Because if you can feel, you are still alive. And if you are alive, the possibility of recovery still exists. One of the greatest mistakes people make in suffering is trying to escape too quickly. They try to leap over pain with positive words. But pain that is not heard becomes resentment, and resentment locks gratitude away. Gratitude in darkness does not ask you to bypass pain. It only asks you not to let pain become the only voice. It invites you to find another voice, very small, very weak, but very real. A voice that says, even though I am hurting, I am not completely abandoned. I have seen people in hospitals in the midst of physical pain still find a quiet anchor. They are grateful for a nurse holding their hand, grateful for morning light entering the room, grateful for a night of slightly better sleep. These things do not remove pain, but they prevent pain from consuming the whole person. This is important. Gratitude does not heal by erasing difficulty. It heals by preventing difficulty from becoming the entire story. When you preserve even a small part of the story for goodness, you preserve yourself. There is a very simple practice in the darkest times. Do not try to find 10 things to be grateful for. Do not pressure yourself. Find one thing in the day where pain did not completely control you. It might be 5 minutes of quiet, a conversation that did not drain you, a moment when you did not cry. One thing is enough. When it is acknowledged, it becomes an anchor. I want to say this clearly. Gratitude in darkness does not weaken you. It is a powerful act of resistance. Resistance against the idea that life is only a series of losses. Resistance against the belief that suffering has the final word. When you practice gratitude in such moments, you are saying, I still have the right to choose my inner stance. Some wounds never fully disappear, but they can become sources of depth. Not because you want them there, but because you learn not to let them drain the most alive part of you. I have seen people after loss become gentler, more understanding, less judgmental. Not because loss is good, but because they did not let loss close them. They kept a small window open for gratitude, and the light entering through that window was enough to help them continue. Gratitude in darkness needs no audience. It is private, quiet, and real. No one needs to know you are practicing this. No one needs to recognize it. It is enough that you know you did not let darkness take over your inner life. If you are in a difficult season and listening now, I do not want to tell you that everything will be fine immediately. I only want to say that you do not have to lose yourself while waiting. You have the right to keep a small piece of inner ground for goodness. And over time, that ground may become the place where you stand again. In the next part, we will talk about a very concrete and steady practice that helps you build the habit of recognizing goodness each day, even without inspiration. A practice that turns gratitude from a rare moment into a way of living. There is a very simple truth that is often overlooked. The human mind sees the world the way it has been trained. If for many years you have trained your mind to focus on lack, mistakes, and danger, then even when circumstances change, that way of seeing remains. And in the same way, if you train your mind to recognize goodness, then even when life is not perfect, you can still see a path forward. A gratitude journal is a tool for this kind of training. I am not talking about a formal notebook or a checklist done for appearance. Not a list written just to complete a task. Not another obligation that makes life heavier. When used correctly, a gratitude journal becomes a spiritual laboratory. A place where you teach your mind a new language. The language of recognition. Many people tell me they have tried gratitude journaling before, but could not maintain it. I usually ask one simple question. How did you write? And their answer often explains why. They wrote in vague terms. They wrote about big ideas that felt distant. They wrote as if completing a moral exercise rather than recording their real lived experience. A gratitude journal does not work at the abstract level. It works at the concrete level. The mind is not trained by general statements. It is trained by details. Because details are where real life actually happens. Instead of writing, I am grateful for my family, write, I am grateful for the moment my child smiled this morning when seeing the rain. Instead of writing, I am grateful for my health, write, I am grateful that today I had enough energy to walk a few blocks without exhaustion. Instead of writing, I am grateful for my job, write, I am grateful that today I handled a difficult task with more calm than before. When you write this way, you are not only recording something good, you are training your mind to look for traces of goodness in real life. And where the mind learns to look, doors begin to open. There is an important principle when using this journal. Do not write too much. Write little but truthfully. 3 things a day are enough. Some days even 1 is enough. What matters is not quantity, but the quality of presence while you write. When you hold the pen, do not rush. Do not treat it as something to finish. Pause briefly. Remember the moment. Feel again how it was when it happened. No need to linger long. Just a few seconds. Those few seconds are where gratitude moves from the mind into the heart. There will be days when writing feels difficult, especially on days of fatigue, tension, or disappointment. On those days, do not force yourself to find something big. Write the smallest thing you cannot deny. For example, I am grateful that today I was able to get out of bed. I am grateful that I can still think. I am grateful for one short quiet moment in the day. These things may seem small, but they keep you from sliding completely into hopelessness. The gratitude journal does not exist to make you excited. It exists to keep your way of seeing from closing down. Another important point: do not use the journal to deny negative emotions. If you feel sad, let yourself be sad. But then look for one thing that sadness has not completely erased. The journal does not fight emotion. It simply opens another perspective. When you write consistently, something interesting happens. After a few weeks, you begin to notice goodness. While it is happening not only at the end of the day, your way of seeing becomes trained to seek balance. Not to deny difficulty, but to avoid letting difficulty take over everything. I have seen people change clearly through this practice alone, not because their lives suddenly became easier, but because they were no longer blind to what was supporting them each day. When you are no longer blind, you are less afraid. When you are less afraid, you act differently. And when you act differently, results change. A gratitude journal also helps you see your journey more clearly. One day, when you look back through old pages, you will notice something important. There were seasons when you thought you were not moving forward. But looking back, you see that you learned, endured, and stayed standing. This brings deep reassurance. You stop measuring life only by immediate results. Do not turn this journal into a duty. If you miss a day, that is fine. Do not blame yourself. Return the next day. Gratitude does not work through perfection. It works through returning again and again. Some people ask when they should write. I often say evening is a good time because the day is closing. But if morning suits you, better write in the morning. There is no sacred hour. Presence is what matters. Most importantly, keep this journal private. Do not write for someone else to read. Do not write to share. When you write only for yourself, you are more honest. And honesty is the only soil where real gratitude can grow. A gratitude journal is not a miracle, but it is a small habit with great cumulative power, like water dripping on stone. Quiet, unhurried. Yet over time, the shape of the stone changes. When you train your way of seeing each day, you do not need to force positivity. You only need to become more truthful to the whole picture. And in that picture, goodness is always present, even if sometimes very modest. In the next part, we will move into a very important and very real topic: how gratitude not only helps you personally, but also heals relationships. And I will ask you a very direct question so you can see clearly what you are bringing into your connections. There is one place where gratitude is tested most clearly, not in career, not in money, but in relationships. Because relationships are where we cannot pretend for long. What you carry inside will sooner or later be revealed. If you carry resentment, you will see faults. If you carry fear, you will see threat. And if you carry gratitude, you will see the real person behind the behavior. Many people say they want better relationships, but they often miss one thing. Relationships do not improve by fixing the other person. They improve by changing what you bring with you into the relationship. No one enters an encounter with empty hands. You always bring an inner state, and that state shapes how you see, how you listen, how you respond. When you bring conscious gratitude, you do not become naive. You do not ignore boundaries. You do not accept what is wrong. But you see the other person through a wider lens. You see that they too are learning, stumbling, carrying their own weight. And when you see this, your tone changes. Even your silence changes. Your reactions are no longer as sharp as before. Many relationships wear down not because of big events, but because of very small absences. A lack of recognition, a lack of sincere thanks, a lack of seeing quiet effort. When these things are not recognized, people contract. They defend themselves. They give less. And then both sides feel unappreciated. Gratitude in relationships is not empty praise. It is seeing the living part of the other person even when they are imperfect. It is recognizing that beneath behaviors that irritate you, there is often an unmet need, an unnamed fear, or an awkward way of loving. I am not saying you must accept every behavior. Gratitude does not erase boundaries, but it changes how you set them. Instead of setting boundaries from anger, you set them from clarity. Instead of speaking from resentment, you speak from awareness. And this gives the relationship a chance to heal, or if it must end, to end with more peace. There is something subtle here. When you bring gratitude into a relationship, you do not only change the relationship, you change yourself within it. You stop reacting from old scripts. You stop repeating familiar stories. You begin to see that you have choice. And when you have choice, you are no longer trapped. Think about relationships that have exhausted you. Very often, it is not only because of the other person, but because you carried many unspoken expectations. You waited for recognition. You waited for understanding. And when it did not come, you felt disappointed. Gratitude helps you see this clearly. It helps you separate expectation from your own worth. When you live in gratitude, you no longer need others to fill an inner emptiness. You come to them not to be saved, but to meet. And without that weight, relationships become much lighter. There is a simple but deep practice. Before saying something difficult to someone, pause and recognize one thing you truly appreciate about them. Not to deny the issue, but to remind yourself that you are speaking to a human being, not a problem. When you do this, your voice changes, and often the outcome changes as well. Gratitude also helps you heal past relationships. Some relationships are no longer present but still occupy much space in your mind. When you view them only through hurt, you keep them alive inside you in the most painful way. But when you can recognize what you learned, how you grew through that experience, you release trapped energy. This does not mean justifying harm. It means not letting harm define the entire story. You keep the lesson and the growth, and you allow the rest to rest. I have seen people completely change the way they love, simply by changing this grateful way of seeing. They no longer love from fear. They no longer cling. They no longer trade themselves to be accepted. And because of that, they begin to attract healthier relationships. Gratitude also teaches you to value the relationships that quietly support you. There are people who do not speak much, who do nothing dramatic, but they are there. They keep their word. They show up. When you recognize and appreciate this, you nourish the strongest foundation for emotional life. I want you to pause here and ask yourself one very direct question. In your current relationships, what are you carrying most? Expectation, resentment, or quiet appreciation? You do not need to answer me. Just be honest with yourself. If you realize you are carrying more heaviness than you thought, do not blame yourself. Recognition is already the first step of change. And gratitude, when practiced rightly, can help you set those burdens down little by little. Thank you for listening until here. Thank you for giving yourself the chance to look at how you are showing up in relationships. This conscious presence is a great gift not only to you, but to everyone who enters your life. In the next part, we will move into a very strong and advanced practice, a form of inner discipline that helps cleanse deep negative habits. It is not easy, but if you are willing, it can open a very different shift in your spiritual life. There comes a stage in spiritual life when inspiration is no longer enough. You have understood. You have tasted beautiful moments of gratitude. You have seen how it softens you, brings clarity and peace. And then life places you again into familiar pressures. Work, family, old mental habits return. Not because you are weak, but because the mind, when not trained consistently, always returns to familiar paths. This is where inner discipline becomes necessary. Not harsh discipline, not force, but a clear choice, repeated again and again. The discipline of gratitude is not meant to create pleasant feelings. It is meant to cleanse the quiet thought streams that shape your life every day. Many people do not realize that they are not living in the present. They are living inside mental reactions. One careless word from someone can pull them back into an old story. One small problem can trigger a chain of anxiety. This does not happen because reality is dangerous, but because the mind has been trained for too long to expect the worst. The discipline of gratitude is your way of intervening in that process. Not by arguing with negative thoughts, not by suppressing them, but by not letting them run unnoticed. This practice is very simple, but not easy. Each time you notice yourself complaining internally, even without speaking, stop immediately. Do not blame yourself. Just stop. Then find one concrete thing in the present moment to acknowledge. Not something ideal, something that is actually here. For example, you are stuck in traffic and anger begins to rise. Discipline here is not telling yourself you should not be angry. Discipline is recognizing the anger and then shifting attention. It might be the afternoon light, the fact that you are safe in your car, a song playing softly. One thing is enough to interrupt the old mental loop. This sounds small, but these small interruptions, when repeated consistently, begin to restructure the mind. You are teaching the mind something new, that it does not have to react immediately, that it has a choice. There is one important principle in this discipline. Do not wait until you are calm to practice. Practice the moment you notice you have drifted. The earlier you intervene, the stronger the effect. Like adjusting the steering wheel when the car has only slightly veered instead of waiting until it has gone far off course. Another powerful form of discipline is limiting negative speech. Not pretending to be positive, but refusing to let words become an unconscious dumping ground. Before complaining to someone, ask yourself one question. Does this help solve anything, or does it only spread heaviness? When you keep this discipline, you will notice something clearly. Many complaints are unnecessary. They do not bring solutions. They only reinforce helplessness. And when you stop speaking them, they gradually lose strength. This does not mean you never share. There are times when speaking is needed for support, but learn to distinguish conscious sharing from unconscious complaining. The discipline of gratitude gives you that clarity. A more advanced practice is morning discipline. Before touching your phone news or other people's demands, take a few minutes to set your inner state. No complex ritual is needed. Just one quiet acknowledgement that today, even without knowing what will happen, you choose to look at life through gratitude. This sentence does not change your schedule, but it changes your starting point. And starting point matters, because the entire day follows that initial momentum. The discipline of gratitude also includes observing what you feed your mind, what content you consume, what conversations you engage in, what stories you linger in too long. Not all of these are bad, but if you do not choose them, they will choose for you. Some people say they want peace, but every day they feed the mind with bad news, comparison, and judgment. Discipline here is alignment between what you desire and what you nourish. I am not saying you must withdraw from the world. I am saying you must take responsibility for what you allow into your mind. Gratitude cannot grow in an environment that constantly activates fear and dissatisfaction. One clear sign this discipline is working is that you begin to notice inner silence. Not total silence, but pauses between reactions. Before you reacted instantly. Now you pause, and in that pause, you have freedom. This freedom is what spiritual maturity looks like. Not because you no longer have emotions, but because emotions no longer drag you blindly. There will be days when you forget to practice, days when you react the old way. That does not mean failure. Discipline is not never falling. Discipline is returning sooner. more gently, without self-punishment. Each time you return, you strengthen a new path in the mind, and over time, that path becomes easier to walk than the old one. I want you to understand this clearly. The discipline of gratitude does not make you rigid. It makes you freer, because you are no longer completely conditioned by circumstances. You gain the ability to choose how you show up. And when you have that ability, the outer life may still be unstable, but your inner life is no longer easily swept away. In the final part, we will return to the larger picture. Gratitude is not just a practice. It is a way of living. A way of living that leads to lasting peace, deep meaning, and a faith not dependent on circumstances. And I will speak to you as someone who has walked this path for a long time, not through theory, but through lived experience. I have walked with people through many different stages of life. I have seen those who began their spiritual journey in hardship, and I have also seen those who turned inward only after the outside of their life seemed complete. And if there is one thing I can say to you with the certainty of lived experience, it is this. In the end, it is not circumstances that determine the quality of your life, but the inner state you choose to carry through every circumstance. When gratitude is understood rightly, it is no longer a technique. It is no longer an exercise. It becomes the way you walk through life, the way you look at a morning, the way you listen to another person, the way you face what does not go as planned. It does not need to be proven, but it endures. When gratitude becomes a way of living, you stop asking so many questions like, why is this happening to me? You begin to ask a different question, deeper and calmer.
What is being invited for me to learn here? That question does not make events disappear, but it keeps events from hardening you. I have seen many people chase peace by trying to control life. They want everything stable, predictable, without surprise. But life does not work that way. Life is movement, and anyone who tries to freeze it will soon become exhausted. Gratitude does not freeze life. It helps you ride its movements without being pulled under.
There is a great difference between peace that comes from control and peace that comes from trust. Peace from control is fragile. One unexpected change, and it collapses. Peace from gratitude is different. It does not depend on everything going your way. It rests on the trust that whatever happens, you still have the capacity to find support from within. When you live with gratitude as a foundation, you no longer have to force positivity. You also do not fall into pessimism. You stand somewhere else, a place of clear acceptance. You see what is happening, but you do not let it decide the value of your life. I want to be very clear. Gratitude does not make you passive. On the contrary, it makes you act more effectively. Because when resentment and fear no longer dominate you, your energy is used where it matters. You stop wasting strength fighting reality. You use it to respond. Some people fear that if they accept and feel grateful, they will lose motivation to change. In reality, the opposite happens. When dissatisfaction no longer drags you down, you gain clarity to see what truly needs to change and what simply needs to be released. Gratitude as a way of living also changes how you see yourself. You no longer define yourself only by success or failure. You see yourself as an unfolding process, a person who is learning, who is growing. And this view brings a gentleness that is deeply needed in a world that is often harsh. There will be days when you do well. There will be days when you lose your way. But when gratitude is the ground, you do not destroy yourself for those lost days. You return, gently, without drama, without grand promises. You simply return to the goodness that is present right now. I have seen people who have lived many years in this spirit. They are not always healthy, not always fortunate, but one thing is clear. They are not bitter. They do not close themselves off. They keep a softness of heart, And that softness in a rigid world is a great strength. When gratitude becomes a way of life, you no longer wait for life to give you reasons to be at peace. You bring peace into life, and from there many things begin to adjust. Not because of miracles, but because you have stopped resisting the flow of goodness. I want you to understand that you do not need to wait until you understand everything to live this way. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to feel grateful all the time. You only need to remember that even on unclear days, there is a deeper level where goodness does not disappear. You may have walked through many difficult stretches. You may be standing at a crossroads without clear direction. I am not here to tell you that everything will be easy. I am here to remind you of something simple and enduring. You do not need to see the whole path. You only need to keep your way of seeing from closing. Gratitude is how that way of seeing stays open. Not open for fantasy, but open for fullness. And when you see more fully, you live more honestly. When you live more honestly, you no longer need to run from yourself. If you have walked with me all the way here, I want to say thank you. Not as a formality, but as a sincere recognition of your patience and presence. Not everyone is willing to pause and listen to these things in a world that is always rushing. I do not hope you remember every word. I hope only one small thing remains with you, a sense that peace is not far away. It begins with how you look at a very ordinary moment in your life. Live each day with that gentle awareness. When you are joyful, be grateful. When you are sad, be kind enough to yourself not to deny that goodness is still there. When you succeed, be humble. When you fail, remember you are not defined by one moment. Gratitude does not promise a life without storms, but it promises a steady boat. And with that boat you can travel far, not to escape life, but to live more fully within it. And as I remind myself each day, not with loud words, but with quiet presence. Goodness is never absent. It only waits to be recognized. And when it is recognized, it grows.